Hi, my name is Paul Marco. Welcome to another episode of Techno Crime Fighters Forum. This is episode 9, if you're keeping track, and you should be keeping track. These things, we break incredible information every week. If you're collecting these, I'm thinking of collecting them and putting them all on CD-ROM. There's bombshells. They're going to really be bombshells in about a year when people start to catch up to what's really going on and they let go of the news and the puppet show that's going on the mainstream media and most of the alternative media. Today, we have just two panelists. We have Karen Milton Stewart and we have Dr. Millicent Black. Now, a lot of people are new to this forum, and it's very important that they know what these panelists are going through, how they got to be targets, and who's currently targeting them. So before we really get into the program and discuss the hardcore stuff, I'm going to have them both introduce themselves with a little bit of their background, and then we can go on to the different subjects that they've been telling me they want to talk about, and I have some things in mind that I want to break. So let's start off with Karen Milton Stewart. Karen, welcome to the podcast. And
hi, thank you.
Would you tell us a little bit about
Dr. Marco.
targeting?
All right, I am basically here because the NSA decided to attack me for doing something that was a intelligence analyst at the National Security Agency for 28 years. And at one point in time, in the later part of my career, I discovered that a series of intelligence reports that I'd written, and it spanned about 6 months, a series of intelligence reports that I'd written that had received all kinds of awards and kudos, were taken by the head of Weapons in Space and given to the promotion board, and he told them that an entirely different person had been responsible for this series of reports, which my own bosses had told me they estimated saved over 2,000 American military lives. So he misrepresented my work to a promotion board to get a woman he was sleeping with in the office promoted. And when I went to the IG decided that, and the IG was George Ellard, who actually was fired last year for taking illegal retribution against whistleblowers. But when the series of events that would set me up and push me out the door based on falsified evidence and falsified accusations. And I found myself being stalked and harassed by NSA security in exactly the same protocol that was used by the East German police called Zersetzung, which means a deconstruction, and the deconstruction refers to every aspect of someone's life. So when their harassment got very extreme, meaning like poisoning a pet dog and killing it, and doing coordinated driving, aggressive driving actions on the road to try to wreck me or kill me, I reported it and I said, you know, you've claimed that you have to investigate me. Well, that's all well and good. It's been going on 3 years. It's stalking harassment. It's not investigation, because I have done nothing wrong and anybody competent could have found it way before now. Well, at that point, they pushed me out the door saying, oh, you're just are stalking and harassing you. And they even told the local police, you're not allowed to look at her evidence, her images, or her license plates. You're not allowed to investigate. So they took over my constitutional rights and forbid them to me. So at a certain point in time, after they fired me, I set up a lawsuit, and I am suing them with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, and they have been desperate to get that taken off the books because it alleges the stalking harassment that, by the way, it looks like they were instrumental in creating throughout the United States. So they didn't want to be tied to it, but they were following the protocol themselves. So that very definitely ties them to it. So this lawsuit they have not been able to shake. And in 2015, when I subpoenaed even more damning evidence against NSA and a certain NSA executive who burglarized my house, they absolutely had a fit. They came down to Florida where I had moved, and apparently told the Fusion Center, the FBI, and the Fusion Center vigilantes, who are called InfraGard, that I was some kind of terrorist threat in order to get these people engaged in, yet again, vicious 24/7 stalking harassment. So after months of that, I actually had a Twitter encounter with Bill Black Jr., who was retired NSA, and he was the deputy director of NSA during 9/11. And at that point in time on Twitter, I had given an interview with a radio blogger. And hello, Catherine.
Hello.
I'd given an interview with a radio blogger on Twitter, and I told him what I knew about 9/11, because I said, you know what, I'm pissed. I have waited for years for this information to come out, and they won't say it. And now they're stalking, harassing me illegally to sabotage a lawsuit that is my right to put, basically to have. And so I told the interviewer, I said, I spoke to two separate NSA analysts years apart, both of whom told me exactly the same story, that they had everything they needed 6 months before 9/11 to stop it, and that not one person had to die. And when I posted this, I did the interview on Radio Blog, and then I posted the transcript. And Bill Black Jr. apparently got wind of it and got his Twitter account and was attacking me as being a troll. And I showed him my badge, and I said, no, I worked there 28 years. I know exactly what I'm talking about. And at that point in time, he tweeted me, he said, that's all I need to know. And then he had said, you better hope that I'm not the real Bill Black Jr., who was deputy director of NSA. And my response was, basically, so what? And it's the truth, and I don't care who you are. And so he erased all of our exchanges, and within a few days in November 2015, my home and my family started to get hit with directed energy weapons. So at that point in time, he was trying to kill me, because you're never ready for directed energy weapons, let me tell you, because the home, basically the washing machine, the dishwasher, the oven, the refrigerator, all kinds of appliances were fried during the first couple days of attack. So that's how powerful they were. And I think only instincts told me where to go in the house to be safe. And I stayed away from the other people in the house so that they would not be harmed. And I was able to get through it. But it's been 24/7 ever since. And we've come to find out that Bill Black Jr. and others setting up or letting 9/11 happen, if they didn't set it up, actually, but letting it happen for the purposes of power and money. Okay, and we have since learned from further investigations that it would appear that the 9/11 victims had their identities stolen and insurance policies and trust funds and properties bought in their name in anticipation of their death by the very people who should have been protecting them. So there were fortunes made on 9/11 by these dirtbags. And to me, I do say I am targeted by Bill Black Jr. because the sequence of events to me is undeniable. And if I am to be killed, then I'm making that statement as a dying declaration that Bill Black Jr. and others of his ilk are behind what's going on with me and are behind what has gone on with a lot of people. So that's who I am. And I'm standing up and I'm saying it, and I'm not going quietly, because this affects thousands of people.
Wow, yeah, it's so impressive. I don't know how you follow that, but I know that, thank you very much for that introduction. Let's go over to Dr. Millicent Black. Now, she's been in the program, I think 27 years. Tell us a little bit about your history with the target and asymmetric warfare. Millicent?
Hi. This
Hi.
all started for me in 1996, actually, when a cousin said to me, Millicent, they told us that we can blame anything on you. 1997, her sister said to me, it's called assimilated controlled warfare. Then she said, the devil is playing with your mind. And when he gets through playing with you, he's going to destroy you. And when they open you up after you're dead, they'll find that all of your organs have been stressed. Keep in mind the words or the phrase destroy you. At that point, I was just kind of going through what looked like some emotional things. I had a marriage that ended. I now know I was actually hypnotized to walk out of that marriage. Um, Within 3 months, I guess, remote controlled to quit my job. Now that didn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to me now. At that time, I thought I was obeying God, right? Not. Um, because I was the head breadwinner, and I had a daughter in college. I had a grandchild who I was legal guardian for. So it made no sense for me to quit a job at a major university that I needed the money to care for my family. But that's what I did. Again, not knowing what was happening. What I do know now is that the people around me, including those two women who told me that information in 1996 and 97, already knew that I had been selected for this program. Now, let me show you the deceptiveness of it all. It was set up in our area by a person who was then in the Air Force, who seemingly was telling people that they were setting it up as spiritual warfare. So the people who were being quote unquote attacked in the night were being attacked by the devil, and they were able to get free of him by fasting and praying. The only problem was that never worked for me. My fasting and praying never got that to go away until finally in 1999, I was at home on a Saturday afternoon, actually working in my hometown then, took a $13,000 cut in pay to get a job in this area. All of that was part of the setup because I was being set up in this area for people to use me for research, not just for research, but also for practice. Um, I got a call, an invitation to dinner. That invitation was for dinner with the man who I believe is responsible for me being in the program. He did reveal yesterday by subliminal messaging that the program actually is the torture program. So you see, that's not anything either that's being used under any regular basis. But surely all the news reports tell us that it is a crime against humanity. It is a war crime for those who are using it on just civilians. The ACLU has filed a lawsuit against James L. Mitchell and John Jensen, who are the two psychologists that were contracted by the CIA to design, implement, and oversee the agency's post 9/11 torture program. The person that is doing this to me was, it seems, exposed to the seer, and that's what's in everybody's ears right now in the news when torture is brought up: survival, resistance, escape, and evasion is what SEER stands for. And Jensen and Mitchell are responsible for, or being right now sued for, the use of that kind of torture on victims who were being held in Guantanamo Bay. So for the last, well, I'll go back. 99 was this visit. I ended up with this person. 2000, I had my first surgery, both little toes. I could not get rid of the pain under any circumstances. Surgery was the only answer. What the issue was, the doctor said, was the little bones in the middle of the little toe. And so she removed them. That was to leave the toe spongy. I was to not have any pain ever again. I go for 8 years with no pain. And all of a sudden, I start having pain again, not just having pain, but I received what I knew were shots to those areas of my little toes. 2001, I have a rotator tear, which takes me to another surgery, shoulder cut open. I come away with what the MRI says was a metallic artifact. I had a doctor, my primary care physician, said to me, "I wish you had told me you were going to have surgery on that shoulder under workers' comp." She said, "I would have told you to use your own insurance because workers' comp is a tool of the devil." This is February 2001. April 2003, I'm driving down my highway and I hear a man's voice say, "They can see through your eyes. Quick, don't read the road signs." At that point, I was, I guess, alerted that something else maybe happened to me during surgery, but I was already suspicious because I got a call from one of my coworkers while I was recovering from the shoulder surgery. And she said, "Oh, I'm just out in the backyard looking up at the stars." I now know that she was trying to warn me that perhaps satellites were on me. Satellites are also called stars. Then I started having problems with my left hand. When I have surgery on the left hand, is to remove the thumb joint. Now, the most significant of these removals is that it's always they call them the basilar joint, BASLAR joint. Now, that doesn't make sense, does it? I don't ever hear about that. Have any of you ever heard about a basilar joint giving people problems? So it was in 1995, the basilar joint in my right hand was removed. That surgeon refused workers' comp. He said, "I don't deal with workers' comp." So now we are over in 2001, and now it's the basilar joint of my left hand. This doctor takes that joint out, and it seems he left a little present in there for me. In February of this year, I went to surgery to try and get that little present removed. And the doctor literally opened my hand, tapped on that thing in my hand. I had an x-ray that showed it. A radiology tech pulled me into a room in 2011. He says, "Come here, let me show you this pen in your hand." And he literally showed it to me and then printed it off for me. So I took it to her. She was going to remove it. She tapped on it, said, "I can't remove it if a doctor put it in it." What she says is scar tissue. I've yet to find out if what she cut away is anything that's significant. But I do know that she closed my hand, and that area is still there. So we've gone through now October 2001 with something else being put in my body. April.
Well, let's say very quickly, we're talking about two different protocols. We're talking about a slow kill protocol with directed energy weapons being used on some people, and with other people, unfortunately, like Dr. Millicent Black, there is a illegal implantation, torture, and experimentation program going on with other Americans. So we're talking at least two different protocols.
Actually, I would like to speak just to support everything that Millicent said so far. Absolutely everything. I think for people who hear it the first time, it sounds incredible, but everything she says, I've since heard from many victims, and I spent the last week working with another victim who experienced something very similar. So the only thing I would like to add, if anything, is everything global. We have a global program. And just very briefly, Millicent, could you maybe put down the camera, because I think it's sliding up and it's shaking when you're speaking. If you just put this in the seconds.
It's so difficult for me to hold this thing. I'm actually holding a tablet, because when I was on the computer, remember how he messed up the computer, messed up the sound,
Yeah.
messed up the visual. So and indeed, protocols. I have the military medical experimentation piece of it, and I also have the slow kill. In 2008, when this person retired, and I began to hear him talk in the night, he did indeed say to me, "I'm going to kill you as slowly as possible." And I do have the directed energy weapon. In 2008, when this person retired, and I began to hear him talk in the night, you all hear that? Say to me, "I'm going to kill you as slowly as possible." And I do have the directed energy weapon.
Here, feedback, reverberation, echo.
Actually, Paul, could you switch off your micro? I think this is called. Yeah?
Is that okay now?
Yeah, please continue. I think it's okay now.
I think that's better. So then we go through, I go through the rest of of
It's okay.
go through the rest of 2001. And January 2002, I step off of a ladder in my bedroom and twist my knee. When I go to get that x-ray, they find that both knees were bad. And I end up in August of 2002 having bilateral knee replacement surgery. And just before the bilateral knee replacement surgery took place, in June of 2002, my right shoulder had to have surgery again. The surgeon says to me as soon as I come out of surgery, he said, "You keloid easily, don't you?" And I said, "No, I don't keloid at all." Turns out that's another location where an implant had been placed. And maybe that was his way of telling me that something else had happened to me. What's significant about all of this? Now I've had 3 surgeries that were paid for by workers' comp, 2 other surgeries that were not. And it's a sense that in all of those surgeries, something was placed in my body. Mindy, I'm about to send over to you an x-ray. It's actually a bone scan. You can put it up on the screen because it shows areas that are undeniably places where I've been implanted.
Is this it? Oh, you're sending me something different.
Okay.
Wait a second.
Including my pubic
Forgive me
bone.
just a second, because I think, Paul, I think we still get transmissions from your microphone. Maybe switch off your microphone. Fantastic. Sorry, Millicent.
Okay. So what I've just sent to Mindy by email is a copy of a bone scan that was ordered by a orthopedic doctor in Dayton, Ohio, and it was taken at a major hospital. That bone scan shows all of the areas where there are actual implants, not just the little things that Melinda Kidder picked up on, but also actual things, including my right jaw, my left wrist, both knees, the top of both feet, my pubic bone. And in any of these areas, I am tortured. I am severely tortured. I have lost teeth from my mouth as a result of being hit in those areas on both sides. I've had teeth cracked and chipped. It's just unconscionable, the things that have been done to me as a result of those objects. And I mean, this is actually being picked up by a scan in a hospital. I'm not talking about what Melinda Kidder found, which was even more than that.
Okay. Millicent, would you like to say who's doing this?
Well,
I mean, not the name, but the agencies involved.
there are 4 branches of the military, 4 branches: Air Force, Army, Navy, Marines, 3 major universities, including my former employer. And I'm not calling those names because I do hope to get into some legal litigation surrounding it, especially those areas where I had workers' comp paid surgeries with a medical doctor saying that is a tool of the devil, meaning that's how they take their victims into these programs, especially the ones where telemetry and satellites are used. I have had the testing that does identify telemetry in my body. There are at least 5 DoD contractors that are also using the frequencies that have been picked up on from my body, and from that the what's called a body area network is what you all see in that X-ray from that Mindy put up on the screen. Of those DoD contractors, Lockheed Martin is one of them. The person that I believe set me up for this program also has an association with Lockheed Martin. So you see, they just cross. But for me, I'm making billions of dollars for someone. I understand that once you put into this kind of program, it costs $5 to $10 million a year. I have been in it for at least 14 years because that's how long it's been since the first surgery. And that was the first workers' comp surgery. It's been 17 years now since the first surgery, where there are also implants in those toes. So you see, you don't know. I
Yeah.
do know that the people around here all were very anxious when I would go to have surgeries. I did not know that the person with whom I was personally involved and who is now an Air Force retiree was actually the one that set me up for the surgeries. Because once he put his things in my body, he was able to direct the energy to those areas to wear out my joints, to direct pain rays. And so trying to get rid of the pain is what forced me to the surgeries. So it became just a circle, a vicious circle.
That's quite an introduction. You said it's 10 million a year. I was doing some research last week and found out that Guantanamo Bay detainees, whatever they call them, they're basically mostly innocent citizens just picked up on a sweep, cost 7 million. So this program to the American taxpayer is even more expensive than the atrocity that we call Guantanamo Bay. So thank you very much, Millicent. Every time I hear your story, I'm amazed more. And I've heard it a couple times now, and I'm looking forward to Ramola's detailed outline or a description of the whole thing. Catherine, welcome to Techno Crime Fighters Forum 9.
Oh.
I would like to have you give the same kind of introduction. Tell us how they threw you in the program and who's torturing you now.
Yeah, so as like all the other ladies, I also have a very interesting story because I got put in the program overtly because I think we begin to find out that all of us have been marked in the past, possibly. I think this is what I begin to suspect from looking at very, very many victim cases. But I've been overtly put into the program, quite demonstratively so, in November 2011. And I changed fields. I'm originally a particle physicist, and I started studying human systems, complex human systems, especially the English court system. That was my first case study, and I attended a high-profile court case. And MI5 started demonstratively stalking me. And it took me absolutely years to figure out what this program is and that I've been put into a program, because it's drawn up to emulate the kind of terror watch lists. So MI5 started overtly stalking me, but of course it wasn't normal surveillance that they were doing. Very quickly it turned into mock surveillance. So people were demonstratively following me in the street and so on. And I was also stalked by high-profile people who appeared over and over. There were quite outrageous scenes. I've been stalked by the same person in 2 to 3 countries. In summary, I mean, I don't want to make my story too long because it's also repeating. What happened to me in a nutshell is that I was stalked for many years. Overtly, I couldn't get rid of my stalkers. They followed me from Britain to Germany and then to Switzerland. I had break-ins into my home. I had miscellaneous sabotage. My businesses were destroyed. They were infiltrated. And for a long time, I didn't figure out what was going on. But every single business person I got into contact with trying to launch my own business turned out to be an infiltrator, and then proceeded to absolutely mock me for my endeavor. And this is something that's absolutely incomprehensible to anybody who doesn't understand what this program actually is. So eventually I just sat down and I did some research to find out what exactly is going on and what's happening. And then I also started to be brutally attacked when I tried to launch my second business. So my story in a nutshell is that on the surface, I've been stalked by MI5, by German intelligence, and then by Swiss intelligence in series, by their human surveillance network. And I started being overtly physically attacked by German intelligence and then by Swiss intelligence non-stop with their directed energy weapons. But going back, I also suspect that some very strange medical issues, skin rashes, I started having just after, a few months after my targeting also have something to do with it. And now I'm being mutilated non-stop across country boundaries. I've been shot at from electromagnetic guns placed in cars, in handbags, on planes, on trains, absolutely everywhere. And meanwhile, one of my main stalkers has appeared several times. Also, I mean, I had outrageous satanic messages and death threats and assassination attempts. And I spent a very, very long time trying to make sense of what actually is going on. And what I did is I founded a joint investigation group, which has the two ladies present, Karen Melton-Stewart and Dr. Millicent Black, as well as Ramola D, who isn't here today, and Melanie Richan in Belgium. And I was working with them trying to investigate this. And what we've now uncovered is, to cut to the chase, that this is a program, as the ladies before me explained. It has several layers and several layers of cons and fakery. At first, ostensibly, it seems to be an anti-terror list. Then it turns out that it actually is a blacklist and people on it have horrific things done to them. Then looking at it more closely, it seems to be a human experimentation program. But then looking at it yet more closely, it turns out that none of the things done to the victims have any resemblance of human experimentation or any sort of scientific endeavor. And the torturers know exactly what they're doing. And it seems to be a systematic, very sexualized mutilation program of predominantly women who are slowly mutilated to death. And I think the best state of knowledge I have now is that I've been put into a program whereby an inner organized crime cartel that seems to have put all the intelligence agencies in the Western world into deep capture is running systematic mutilation programs of women who are then use this for business plans in various ways. So Karen mentioned, for example, the fraudulent life insurances that we've discovered made out in victims' names. Dr. Millicent Black mentioned, for example, our data, the biodata of the chips being used by universities and defense contractors and military people. But there's also, I think, other business plans, which is simply the sexual exploitation of women. All the female victims experience sexual assaults, remote electronic rape, and brutal, sometimes genital mutilation. And I'm also one of them. This is now the story of my targeting, and it comes up to today. So I'm also a consultant, I'm a systems analyst, and what I'm now doing full time is I work for the joint investigation team, and I am investigating these crimes in the total absence of any police force and any police investigation. So that is me. We also discovered that the police services don't just ignore crimes committed with these implants and nanotechnology and micro or electromagnetic weapons. They actively attack the victims, which is a telltale sign of deep capture in the police force. So the Western police forces are in deep capture by organized crime. So are the intelligence agencies, who are even deeper in deep capture. I can also confirm that actually quite large parts of the judiciary are also in deep capture. So my role is essentially as the founder of this joint investigation team. I'm trying to assist governments and organizations to move out of deep capture. Meanwhile, I'm being mutilated and I'm fighting for my life like all the other ladies. So that's me.
Thank you very much, Dr. Catherine Horton. Now, before you joined us, Catherine, Karen and Melissa were kind of outlining where they wanted to take this broadcast. So, Karen, would you like to lead the...
Okay, I will just tell you a couple of things that I have done this week, and I would encourage people to try. No matter who you are, where you are, because you never know where and when a breakthrough will come through. I have a couple good leads. I contacted the head of one of the militias, American militias, and gave him a synopsis of what was going on. I could read that, but at some point, but he wrote back immediately, because I told him what was going on, and I said, look, if you guys think that you're going to defend the homeland with guns and bullets, you need to investigate what I'm going to be telling you, because we are being already attacked with asymmetrical covert warfare, and people are dying. I said, this is a fight you guys need to learn about and get into. And then I sent him all kinds of links to, World Beyond Belief and other articles and interviews. And within a few hours, he actually wrote back to me saying, too, and that he would be getting back to me this afternoon, calling me, and we could talk. So I'm very optimistic that this person may be able to alert and influence militias across the United States to look into what is going on with targeted people in their state. And I said, these people who are attacking us are such rank cowards that what would happen if one of these real brave men who hide behind 1,000 other men with covert weapons you can use at a distance, what if 5 or 10 real men came to their door and said, we know what you're doing, stop it or else? So that's promising, I hope. And a second thing is that I got in touch with a certain ACLU organization in a certain state, and I'm not going to name where, and told them about myself and what is going on, and they actually reached out and said, tell us more. So I know that a lot of people in the ACLU, different organizations across the nation, have been scared off. They have been threatened and told to ignore this, but this is somebody who has written about national security issues, and I'm hoping this person will follow through and use at least part of it, if not all of it, and then we can maybe rally the ACLU to actually do something. So again, these are a couple leads, and I'm hoping something will come out of these leads. And like I said, I just keep telling people, don't give up, keep pounding on those doors, because God knows where the open door is going to be.
That's right. That's the truth.
Very good. So where do we go from here?
Let me.
I
No,
think Millicent should be next, because I think she was
Go
about to say something.
Let me just share about some of the things that I've done, some of the people that I've contacted. I've had some amazing responses. Unfortunately, they haven't brought it to an end. But I started off by contacting the Joint Non-Lethal Weapons Directorate in Quantico, Virginia. I wrote them, I actually called. I called and got a guy on the phone. I told him what was happening to me. I told him about my relationship with that retired, at that point, 2011 was the year, retired Air Force person. He said, send me a email. He said, I'll check. And when I contacted him again to get the information back, he said, I've checked. You are not an enemy combatant. There are no rules of engagement concerning you. And there's no human use protocol concerning you. He said, so we're not doing it. But it doesn't mean that the DOJ or the what's the other one? Or the DOD, I guess, isn't, no, DOJ,
DOD, Department of Defense.
Okay, the DOJ or the FBI. He said, doesn't mean that the DOJ or the FBI isn't using you for research. He did not say using you for research, but isn't using you. So, but since then, Melinda Kidder has done a global terrorist watch list search, and she says your name isn't there. So you're not on anybody's list. So it's not the DOD, the DOJ, or the FBI. Now, the person that supposedly put me in the program is trained in SEER torture. And because of that, I have been victimized by it. And his training is remotely. And so there is a picture from an Air Force Research Laboratory manual that shows the body of what could be a woman. The entire body is circled off into joints, and there's a number there. And my understanding is they can put that number in a computer, send it to a satellite, and that person will be struck in that exact location. That's how the remote torture is done. In addition to all the other locations where they can put an implant in your body or a chip of whatever kind they use. Melinda calls them waveguides, and that just is a place, a an object that guides a wave, whether it's a microwave, a radio, X-ray, a gamma ray, it just guides the wave to that location of the human body. And there you have, after that, you have inflammation. From the inflammation could become then necrotic tissue. From the necrotic tissue becomes cancer. That's why it's so important to keep the body hydrated, and also to take any of the natural supplements that help your body to rid itself of the radiation exposure. There's so many ways they have that they are torturing not just women, but also children. And indeed, Catherine is right. They are setting women and children up for sex slavery. I am in contact with 3 women over the age of 60. All of them are being used in one way or the other for human trafficking for sexual purposes. One of them is electronic rape, and whether they are broadcasting her by television or some other telewave, I'm not sure. The other one they seem to be hypnotizing her in her bed at night and coming in and raping her in her bed. She said, I wake up and my hair is fixed and I have makeup on, and I don't know how that happened. So you see, law enforcement is confirming to her that this is happening and that there is a huge market for women in her age range. Come on now, a huge market for women in sex slavery in their 60s. So you see, it's extremely, extremely serious going on. Seriousness. Military training is being used now to open sex markets, and not just, it's not just for entertainment, but it's for money. It's for pay. So we have to really, really continue to get the word out that things are happening, and things are happening in an extremely accelerated way to exacerbate the criminality in our nation. I have just sent to Mindy a picture of my head, of the top of my head, and you can see actually the burns in the top of my head where I am having the V2K nonstop. There's also on that picture that I sent to her a copy of an EEG that shows the erratic waves, and these particular EEGs are during the daytime. So it shows how much my brain is invaded day and night. I have sleep studies that have been done, 2 in Tennessee, 1 in Ohio, and it shows that they don't miss a beat. My brain is never without someone communicating vocally to it. And so how can you think? How can you live a normal life? How can you make rational decisions? And I have to tell all of you, it is by the grace of God that I was able to finish a doctoral program, that I was able to go through the research and the examinations and the meetings and all of the concentration that it took to read the articles and to read the books, to glean the information. My doctoral dissertation, by the way, was on empowering the church, educating the church to empower women who suffer in silence from domestic abuse, a journey to recovery. And then the recovery includes the recovery of the voice of the woman who's been silenced. I chose that subject mainly because of what's happening in America. The police department, when I called them and said, I have proof that someone has put a chip in my heart, y'all, they convinced my children to have me committed, or well, to quote unquote, to have me examined, because my behavior had been strange, they said. By then, I'd already been accepted to a doctoral program and was just waiting on the program to start. So it's incredible what they can get away with. And it's incredible the way they can manipulate people to cooperate with their quote unquote program.
Let me just throw something in here, Millicent. I'm sure this is a lot about women because they make better sex slaves. Not that there aren't male sex slaves, because there certainly are. But we'll get comments that men are in this program too. And I do get emails from men every day that are going through this too. So it's not exclusively women. But
Right.
I read somewhere that it's like 70% women. Do
Right.
you think? So, yeah, continue. Before we get to comment, I just thought I'd throw that in.
So I just would like to throw in one more thing. Also, a lot of the victims are murdered, and I rather suspect that a high rate of men is also murdered.
Right.
Because they want to get rid of them, business competitors, or just get rid of other men who might become dangerous as in just helping to solve the crime. And that might
Right.
skew statistics as well. But so we know we shouldn't ignore the men. I'm just saying that when it's about ongoing torture, then you're absolutely right. 70 to 80% are women. I emphasized women always, and I get a lot of complaints from men. And I want to just say that every time we do that, we do not ignore the men. I'm just trying to highlight the high sexual aspect, because a high female victim ratio is indicative of sexual violence. It's not indicative of paranoia or schizophrenia, because that's 60% men. And it's also not indicative of human experimentation, because there should be 50-50 men and women for, a balanced scientific inquiry. So I just emphasize this, not to ignore the men, but to just emphasize the sexual violence component that, Millicent is also talking about. I completely agree with that.
Men are also used as sex slaves. That needs to be said.
Absolutely. Also, let's go to the torture aspect by itself. Somebody who is able to do this torture is obviously a psychopath, maybe a Satanist, but certainly a psychopath, because normal people can't do this. Normal people can inflict this kind of pain on another human being without feeling some empathy, without having some remorse. But these creatures obviously don't have that. And if you take torture takes the lid off. If you'll do torture, what won't you do? Gas people in Syria, change documents, these puppets that you're seeing in the government, the Trump firing Comey and all, they're all psychopaths, because they are complicit in all of these torture programs. If they're not blowing the whistle, then they're complicit. So I think torture, when we get to the point where we're uncovering torture, and now we're uncovering it to a large segment of the population, there's millions of people that are going through what these three people are going through, and all of us are being impregnated with smart dust through the chemtrails. They're putting an astral net over the planet. We're all in the program. And there's nothing they won't do. If they'll do torture, there's nothing's off the table. So I think the human race is in, excuse my language, deep shit at this point. So anyway, that's my 2 cents on that.
No, I'm in full agreement. This is an extinction event, because there are psychopaths who think because they have all the money in the world that they're gods. And as gods, they can decide what the little people, what can be done to or with the little people. And it's just hubris. It's pride on a level never seen before. And it's just because you have money, you have the right to take or twist or pervert or damage some other human being's life. No, you don't. Never. And you never will. But these people think it. And even though when you talk to the police or you talk to other people, they say, well, why would anybody do that? And I say consistently, how do I, as a normal person, explain the mind of a psychopath? They are doing it, and you need to brace for it. You need to get ready for it. Because if you sit there and try to figure out in a normal logic, why would somebody do this? They're going to be twiddling your thumbs when they come and take you. So know that psychopaths don't think the way that we do. And there is no explaining it. It's not logical. But it's what they believe.
You know what? I absolutely, completely want to underline that. You are 100% Karen. And the way I try to explain it to people is to say, look, you're not dealing with somebody normal, and then name, some locally known serial killer. So name a, serial killer who's known widely in the US and here, in Europe or in Britain, for example, it would be, well, you are dealing with Fred and Rose West. These were prolific child killers. Are you going to ponder before you arrest Fred and Rose West why they, entrap children and mutilate and torture them to death? No, you're just gonna actually arrest them. No one cares why they're doing it. It's because they're sick in the head. And I think the one missing element that we haven't discussed is how come so many psychopaths are in these upper echelons, because we see exactly the same development in the big revelations about pedophilia and child torture, these pedo-satanists and everywhere around the world. And the reason why it is so global, it's because, and now I'm saying it, and I think everything we'll discover will underline it, is that these people have been promoted on purpose. There are two effects. One of them is the one that Paul pointed out, the natural accumulation of psychopaths at the top. He called pyramid organizations psychopath magnets, and I think that's entirely correct. And there was a second enhancing factor here, and that is that a huge cartel that has been identified in 2011 by Swiss systems analysts and mathematicians that owns, I think, 40% of all the global corporations, has been trying to buy governments and police forces, especially intelligence agencies, by putting people there who have very strong control files. And the strongest control files are pedophilia and serial killing and necrophilia. So this is why we now wake up as humanity and we discover that the top people in government, sometimes top lawyers, sometimes judges, anybody who is systemically important to an organized crime cartel actually has these criminal aspects to them. They had to have them to be promoted there, to be allowed to go there by this crime cartel. So it's not by accident at all that we see this, because everything Millicent described about the FBI and the military in the US is one-to-one mirrored about the intelligence agencies, the police in Belgium, in Germany, in the UK, in Switzerland, as I discovered to my horror. It is everywhere. I've got absolutely identical reports from South Africa, from Japan, from Poland. It's everywhere. Right. And that's the missing link. So now no one can say this is a conspiracy theory, because this huge organized crime cartel has been scientifically uncovered. And, every day we get more and more to know about it. But the key thing to understand is that it is a corporation. It's a business. It's a private business. And it's been trying to subvert democracies and governments, actually for centuries, but it's really heated up, throughout the 20th century. And it has huge successes, actually, because I think now we're discovering that the entire First and Second World War was an asset stripping exercise by this corporation. This is, it's as shocking as it sounds. Everything that was, supposed military reasons or politics was actually a puppet show. And the situation we're in now, I think, is that this corporation, this global corporation, this cartel, is again trying to do a big asset stripping exercise after it has asset stripped pretty much Africa, Latin America, and the Middle East. Now it's coming to Europe. Now it's coming home, so to speak, and now it wants to clear the deck. So, I talked about this program, for a long time, and what I think is underlying this, but I think this aspect explains why what Millicent, Millicent, Karen, and Ramola are in 3 different US states. Melanie Richan is in Belgium, and I have experience of identical things in the UK, Germany, and Switzerland. How can this be? How can it be that all of 5 women, it's to the letter identical what we're experiencing? It's because it's the same program. So there has to be an entity that's running it that is, it's supranational, it's bigger than a nation. And that is the only entity known in the world that has this scale. So we can safely say that what we're dealing with is business plans by this corporation this global corporation that has put all of our governments, and especially our intelligence agencies and police forces, into deep capture. And it could put these entities into deep capture, especially the intelligence agencies, because they're secretive. And that's how we all hang together. What Karen saw when she first came up, and what Bill Binney and Kirk Wiebe saw, is the identical deep capture of NSA through this global corporation, I think. They saw just different tentacles of the beast. What I saw in the UK when MI5 started stalking me for no good reason and started trafficking me for the sexual delectation of what looked like retired MI5 agents, MI6 agents, that was this corporation. It was a business plan by this corporation. So I think this is what we're dealing with. And so what I would like to report also for my last week is that I have worked now the last 2 weeks with Melanie Richan in Belgium. It was very interesting. And what she also told me about is past scanning sessions that she did. And Millicent mentioned, for example, that children are being attacked. And I can confirm now, Melanie Richan said that in past scanning sessions, they found chips in young children. And we'll, bring her on. She's part of the team, so I will bring her on, and she can explain in detail. But she had single moms. Usually, the intelligence agencies attack single mothers because they are vulnerable and for other reasons. And she said when she had a lot of young mothers come and say, "I'm being stalked and harassed, and I think my child might be chipped." They scanned the child, and in all cases, they found chips in the child as well. So imagine these intelligence agencies, they take entire families. And it's not just that. The audacity of the intelligence agencies was that for example, when I started being shot into in January 2016, I heard about the court case of Philip Kerr versus MI5, and I traveled to London for that. Now, MI5 amused themselves with sending their young trainee agents to harass me and essentially talk to me and make fun of me, but also talk about the targeting quite openly to my face. And what one of these agents said to me is that, well, it's done by the Freemasons, which is kind of true because the Freemasons are entirely infiltrated by MI5 in the UK. So Freemasonry and MI5 in the UK are synonymous because they cross-infiltrate. But she said they take entire families. They take entire families. And then she smiled at me. At the time, I didn't know that my sister would also be, stalked and harassed. Oh, sorry, no, by that time I did know, but I wasn't prepared for her also being systematically attacked. But since then, my family has been systematically attacked. And MI5 basically sent a trainee agent to say to me, point it out to me that, yes, they will attack my family as well, my entire family. And, Millicent had a similar experience. I think Ramola had a similar experience, and certainly Melanie as well. So these people are totally degenerate, Absolutely, Paul, you're absolutely right. And Karen, these people are mentally ill. And we cannot apply, first of all, the normal standards of normal behavior. People have to understand that if you want to check if a victim statement sounds kind of credible, you always have to have the mental image of a serial killer. These people are talking about a serial killer. Does it make sense that a serial killer would do that? And you can tell, actually, many elements that victims report have telltale signs of serial killers. Obsessiveness, obsessive stalking, slow torture, enjoying it, a sexual element, all these features are always there. But I would just like to finish off by saying that when I was in Belgium, Melanie Richan was, and this again underlines the sexual component, she has implants all over her body, including in her inner thighs. And when we had the meeting of a human rights charity, Ikator, her thighs were burned during the meeting. They were actually burned. They heated the chips, and then after the meeting, she actually confided that she was in agony, and she showed me the burns, and her inner thighs, you could see fresh burns. So this is how degenerate they are. But the sexual element is not lost on anyone here. And they did the same thing the next day. We went and reported it to the police. I wrote a 6-page police report. The police first they lost my email, and then we sent it again. We went in person, and then we got through to a very nice woman who actually works with Melanie, and she's been handling her case. And then she came out and she said to our face, listen, as a police, we do not have the means to do anything about it. This has to go to the Attorney General, you know. And we took the entire case, and on, I think it was Wednesday, yes, Wednesday, no, sorry, Tuesday. On Tuesday, we submitted the entire case to the Belgian Attorney General. And we will take it further. You know, we also talked to a lawyer who didn't seem extremely enthusiastic taking the fight on. But since then, we also, you know, had ideas of how we can proceed. But I'm telling everybody, you know, the time is running out and it is extremely urgent. I'm so glad, Karen, that you're reporting this about the militia, because I hope they hear what we're saying today, because they have to understand that time's running out. You know, in a sense, the corporation, as far as I can tell, the corporation is trying to kick off World War III for asset stripping purposes, and they are fast, you know. And as far as I can tell, they put every person of integrity and worth into this mutilation and torture program. A lot of the men have also been mutilated. They've lost limbs sometimes, you know, they've had car accidents and they also died. But what we're having is a situation where the best people of civil society are being tortured or murdered. Meanwhile, the corporation is hoovering off all the psychopaths and corrupts and pedophiles, putting them into high places, and is trying to take down our governments. That's as far as I can tell. But now the status quo from me is that, you know, the Belgian Attorney General received the file. I will send more information as well later on. We try to also do scanning with Melanie, and we found chips in my body. I've got a chip in my neck, on the top of my head, in my ears, just like Melanie. She also informed me that the locations where they put chips is identical in every person. She's now, you know, seen the scans of many, many people. So this is a systematic program. But in reverse, if we find out where the chips are, we can very quickly find them in all people, you know, and that's what we're working towards. So I traveled to Brussels from Zurich last week and this week, and I just came back yesterday, or rather this morning at 3 a.m. But this is it. So we are building a protocol of how to find these chips. And I'm so grateful for the work that Millicent has done, because she also managed to find the really deep lying chips in the joints. And that is absolutely stellar research work. You know, that's an absolute bombshell, because Millicent has got, I think, you know, a portfolio of 5 or so different tests that people can do. You know, I mean, you can name them again, Millicent. You had the sleep study, and then I think also inflammation tests and stuff like that, right? Can you just list them, all the things you did?
I've done absolutely the sleep study. Neurologists can do EEGs during the daytime, which can also track the amount of radio frequency, you know, communication that's happening to your brain. I've had, I've had to have the CT scans and the MRIs because of the pain and the difficulties that I have. Once the chip was found in my heart, then a medical doctor ordered a CT scan of my upper chest. They found that there are what they call calcified and non-calcified nodules. And she explained that to me recently. She said, when the body identifies something that's foreign in it, the first thing it does is begin to come around it, and tissue is there. She said, but the longer it stays, that tissue begins to calcify. So then it makes like a hard shell to make sure that it stays contained. So they have found both calcified and non-calcified nodules in my heart, in my lungs, in my spleen, in my at number 10 of my rib cage, and also in my gallbladder. So you see, those are areas where things have been placed in my body, and most recently my right breast is now of concern. My thyroid has been a concern for the last 3 or 4 years. There is something definitely behind my voice box that no one is willing to acknowledge. I've had an ENT go down and look at it, and he says, yeah, you do have inflammation in that area. Well, what causes inflammation? You know, they know that. I sent over to Mindy a copy of the back of my body scan that Melinda Kidder did. and you can see all of the implants in my legs that are actually used for torture. Mindy, if you could flash that up on the screen, let them see, especially my legs and around my knees. Did you receive it, Mindy?
Did we lose them?
Is that the body scan we had up on the image just up on the screen a moment ago? Is that the whole body scan?
Right. This is the body scan that was actually done by Melinda Kidder. Look at the back of my thighs. So when I'm sitting working, when I'm sitting driving 6 hours between Ohio and Tennessee, or to West Tennessee to the doctor, which is 3.5 hours, or to Atlanta, Georgia, where I had the surgery, which is 4.5 hours, the backs of my legs are being heated. And when I stand, it hurts like everything. Notice it in the backs of my arms. So when I rest my arm on the armrest on the way, while I'm driving the car, he can be burning and have burned the bottom of my arm right below my elbow. You see those, there are implants in both shoulders. And so they can actually be used to prevent me from being able to raise my arm or to assimilate a rotator tear when there really is none.
Right. Let me interject something here. What we're being asked in the chat is, where can you get these scans? That was a question that Catherine might want to answer. And also, Millicent, are these being put into you when you sleep or when you're awake? How do you think they're getting there?
These that you're seeing on the body scan, I believe the person that set me up for the program, he takes responsibility. And he said that I stayed the night in a room with him. He said, that night I loaded your body with microchips. I put them everywhere I could think of. Notice the one on the right back. That's my right kidney.
Yeah.
Now this particular body scan was done by a private investigator in Columbia, Missouri, named Melinda Kidder. Sometimes if there are a group of people that want to have a scan done in the same location, she will go to them and they would just share the cost of her travel expenses. Otherwise, you can do as I did. I drove to Columbia, Missouri, and she did the body scan. She also now does a thermal scan that also confirms her findings, because the thermal scan would show areas of hot spots in the body. And when those hot spots are showing up in the exact same location as where she finds what she calls a waveguide, then that's a clear indication that there's a chip there.
Somebody's saying GMOs is one way to get in there.
Somebody in the chat is saying that GMOs is another way to get them in there.
I've heard of you go for surgery, you get loaded up, you go to sleep or become unconscious from having your room or your house gassed, you get certain chips put in you. I've even heard of someone, my dog, getting sharp shot.
Yeah, I think that Catherine, didn't you say you were shot and Melissa was shot? No, Romola was shot.
Yeah, so I think, actually another thing to keep in mind is that when you have these chips in the neck and you don't know that they can also just set off the chip and give you one burst of intense pain, and then you think you've been shot, but actually they just set off a chip. So now that we found the chip emitting in my neck, I have to check first. We have to localize it exactly where the chip is, so that from memory I can figure out if I was actually shot somewhere, or if it was the chip being set off. So that's another thing. But certainly what I had is at one point I think I was really sharp shot with something into my upper arm, because when I turned back, there was a guy who was dragging something out of the hedge that I just walked past when my arm was, I think, shot into. Then he put it into a car and disappeared. So yeah, sharp shooting is certainly one of them. Ramola was sharp shot. GMOs, I think I would have difficulty. I think there's a lot of really bad stuff in GMOs, absolutely. And they can always put, for example, parasites and synthetic self-replicators into food. But when you look at chips being in very particular locations, if it's through food, it would, you know, you would have to explain why it's just one kidney and not the other, you know.
Right.
So I think there's either they actually load them, or they load them and then they have some sort of electromagnetic remote steering, you know, of these potentially microbots to steer them to one part of the body. I have no idea. I mean, we have to keep an open mind and be prepared for any sort of modern technology. But I think just through basic consumption, it wouldn't explain the precise locations, you know. And what Melanie found, and it was actually startling because, you know, we first scanned her and we could, I could see with my eye, with actually really basic bug detection devices, her chips, and then we started scanning me, and I had you know, electromagnetic emissions in exactly the same place. And that's when she said, oh, hang on, if you have these chips, I know exactly where the next one is. So she puts it down to my neck and this device goes off again, and she's like, okay, you probably have one in your upper arm, and she puts it and this device goes off. So, you know, she knew where these things were because she's seen so many victims. But people were asking where to get these scans done. And I think what we'll do as a joint investigation team is we'll put together all the different scans that we have done, which we can tell are, you know, leading to success, and maybe make a little write-up so that people can emulate it, you know, maybe with contact addresses of people who are willing to offer it, or maybe say, you know, like Millicent has done in general, say, get a sleep study done and stuff like that, you know. Because we have to somehow ship it to the nation and globally so that people can do their own tests.
I wonder if it'd be worthwhile if we kind of back engineered this. You know, Catherine, you taught me one thing early on, that when they create conspiracy theory, in business language, we call that a business plan. So if they're doing something in the big triangle organizations, and these all emanate from the triangle, remember, the triangle is the control system of the matrix. They have to use it, they use it all the time. Now, if it's emanating from a control system, a triangle control system, from a business plan, the business plan will follow down through various patterns and various techniques that will be sanctioned by that business plan. So what I'm thinking is that if we're in Europe and we're discovering the same pattern of chipping, or the same pattern of harassment, or the same pattern of gang stalking, can we put these together and follow it back to where the business plan is, and what the agency is doing, what agency is doing that business plan? Because it seems to me the military, which is mostly in charge of Millicent's agony and torture, seems to be different than the more domestic MI5, MI6, European, whoever's running that business plan. Does it make sense to kind of aggregate the different victims so that we can follow back and find the business plan that birthed these torture things? Or am I off base? I don't know.
No, I think you're absolutely right. I think you absolutely hit the nail totally on the head, Paul. I'm so grateful for this because, I mean, first of all, I don't think my torture program in Millicent is different. It is just hers is much more advanced. When she showed the back of the scan of her body, the one from Melinda Kidder, there's one location in the right kidney. Now, I have been hit in the right kidney for, I mean, not the past 2 weeks in Belgium, but all the weeks previously. And Melanie also said something that they are growing some sort of self-replicators in our bodies. And for that, the pH value of the kidney, there are 2 places in the body where they can do this. It's, I think, the guts and the kidney. And that's why they might place one of these things into the kidney. So there's all this kind of scientific stuff as well. But the kidney is, you know, and okay, right, left kidney could be 50% chance, but I also have something going on with my right kidney. So I think mine and Millicent's torture program might be very related. They also have been hitting me in the joints, and I now discover that they might have been setting off chips because once they hit me very, very hard in my right hip and my ankle, after that, both my hip and my ankle got massively swollen. And since then they were trying to hit me, but as part of a harassment pattern. So you also learn that they do things in series. You never get two things at once. There's always a pattern, and there's also a pattern in time. So from the pattern, I can tell that they can set off something remotely in my hip and my ankle, So I think I might have chips in there as well. Also, Melanie found, she said that on her body, she found very fine laser surgery scars. And they look just like natural, little grooves you might have in your skin. Then you have to look very carefully, but once you know what you're looking for, you can pick them up. And she immediately saw several of these scars on my arm, which I've never discovered. And they were, hinting at locations where there were emissions as well. And then she showed me she also had doctors remove many implants from her body, several from her stomach area, several from her thighs. So this is real, people. It's absolutely horrific. And I have no recollection of ever being implanted. But she says they use, for example, this date rape drug. She knows the names of the drugs. They always escape me. But it's these kind of standard drugs.
Hypno.
Exactly, yeah. And there are two other two as well. And she says people wake up and they've got no recollection of being, of having anything done to them. But I think if I remember correctly, she said that once she kind of woke up in a dazed phase, and she had the feeling of people actually, pushing on her stomach and doing something to her stomach. But it's horrific, because getting these chips out of your body, you basically have to, she says injecting these chips is sometimes you just need a syringe. So you can just easily put, 60
Right.
chips into people's
Right.
bodies, but then getting them out, it's major surgery, So what we're dealing with is a bunch of absolute total, beyond repair psychopaths. But Paul, to return to your point, based on what Melanie saw from victims from all around the world, based on what I have read from victim statements, also including South Africa and so on, I think there might be sub-programs, but even the sub-programs are identical across the world, So I think we're dealing with one big program here. And that means automatically that, I had dealings with MI5 to my face, and they shot me in the head, or maybe set off a chip in the back of my head straight after my first court hearing, so that I collapsed in pain. So it's MI5, I'm pretty sure. And I had dealings with the German and with Swiss intelligence, and I lived next to the German intelligence headquarters, and the harassment was clearly from them, 1.5 kilometers from, from their headquarters. So I have got evidence that it is definitely German intelligence, and definitely British, and definitely Swiss intelligence who has been harassing me, and they have been acting in an identical fashion, which automatically means, Paul, that German intelligence, Swiss and English intelligence, and even, the intelligence agencies in the US are all part of the same deep capture, because they are acting criminally in an identical fashion at the same time. So this means that what I'm fighting here in Switzerland or Germany or in Britain against MI5 is identical to the fight that Karen Stewart has with the NSA, and that Bill Binney and Kirk Wiebe had with the NSA. We're all fighting the same entity. And as you said, we're seeing the same pyramid, hierarchy. But take it one step further, Paul. If it's a global pyramid steered program, it also means that there have to be at every level lots and lots of communication traces, because this plan has to be communicated from head office down to all the local branches. And I think based on what we see, it is now, and I've said this in the past, but maybe now people see this, for themselves. I think it's fair to say that by now, NSA, MI5, MI6, BND in Germany, and NDB in Switzerland, and also the KGB, because the Russians are doing the same thing. They are just branch officers of the same entity. 100%. As soon as you find, the KGB having a program that's identical to this, and Melanie Richard talked to many Russian victims, you know the KGB is just a branch office of the same entity. And there we are. So, and with this, we can also sweep away all these like prepared, you know, the next prepared puppet show of the US against Russia. It's nonsense. They're the same organization. It's part of the same corporation, if you like.
Absolutely. Now, should we try to, these are all branch offices. We know these are all branch offices, and they have to report to some super organization that's over them. How can we try to penetrate that level? I mean, are we going interdimensionally? Are we talking about what possibly could put all of these organizations in deep capture? I'm just one speculation here.
Oh, I don't think we need to speculate. Sorry, Karen, do you want to say something?
No, go ahead. And if it's pertinent after you've finished, then I'll say something.
Okay, so I think this is the beauty, Paul. We don't have to speculate anymore. I think this is why I call this Swiss paper that I mentioned before. They called it the Network of Global Corporate Control. That's the name of their scientific paper. It has been published by the Systems Analysis Department at ETH Zurich. And the name of these mathematicians were Gladfelder, Vitali, and I always forget the third one. Please forgive me. You know, this guy must hate me because I always reference the paper and forget him. But anyway, so it was a 2011 paper, and it's free. The PDF is freely available on archive.org. That's spelled with an S, ARXIV.org. If you go into the search and type Network of Global Corporate Control, you'll find a 2011 paper. And so what we're looking for, Paul, is an entity that is bigger than any one nation state and is pretty big. So it has to be global, it has to be bigger than the US, it has to be bigger than the UK, and so on. And this entity, so these Swiss mathematicians identified a cartel, an actual structure hanging together. They analyzed 43,000 global companies, international companies. They went through the company registers, and they did database analysis on it. So they used sophisticated database tools to map how these companies hang together. They first looked at share ownership, as far as that's publicly available. Now, what the real bombshell was when they looked at company ownership, because that showed something that the share ownership didn't show. And this is this interlocking structure whereby 40% of these global and international companies are controlled, are part of the same control system. And the way this control system has been set up is by interlocking board membership. And this is really important to understand, because share ownership doesn't actually give you that much control. Yes, you might have a shareholder meeting and you might raise some noise, but the real power is the board. And this entity, this organized crime syndicate, actually discovered that. So they placed the same corrupt, directors on, corrupt, I can't say that, it doesn't say it in the paper, but they certainly placed the same directors onto many companies. And bit by bit, they assembled these interlocking board memberships so that control, the ultimate board control, was flowing towards the same mothership, the same mother company, and from that into bigger companies and so on. And when you analyze this, with these data-based analysis tools, you discover that 40% of the global corporations hang together and they report to the same thing called the super entity. And I think the database analysis from the public company registers managed to identify the super entity that controls them all, but couldn't quite pin it down, because at a certain level it becomes very secretive. You get money just being siphoned off into untraceable ways. So that's as far as we can say. And the companies that are at the top tier of the super entities include banks, insurance companies, and stuff like that. So they're the top tier, because they are even bigger than the arms dealers, because the arms dealers are manufacturing industries. But what's even more powerful is finance, because that's where the money gets produced, the money gets printed, if you like. So that is the only known entity that qualifies in size to do this. So I think it's fair to say that that's the entity that does it. And then if you want to find out what is above the level of the publicly documented level, you have to go to the documents uncovered and the actual knowledge of Karen Stewart and people at the World Bank. And they map out the bit that's above the super entity, I think. And then we get to the very
Karen
top.
Hudis.
Yeah, Karen Hudis, exactly. Sorry, so did I say Karen Stewart? Sorry. Sorry, I was looking at your image down on the screen. No, Karen Hudis, exactly. And people, I think, at the World Bank and the IMF know the owners of this very well, you know, because they're dealing with them. So people in finance at the top tier know who own these corporations. And I think that is the ultimate answer. And at the top, it's from a systems analysis point of view. One of the things that I can say is that when you look at you take a snapshot in time and you look at the market and you look at the biggest asset owner, unless there's a cataclysmic event, the biggest asset owner will continue to accumulate assets at a higher rate than anybody else as a to do with its size, its dominant position. And therefore, the biggest asset owner at one point in time will remain the biggest asset owner and will just grow ever bigger if you go forward in time. So if you want to find out who the biggest asset owner is now, in 2017, you can go back in time and look at the 19th century, which entity was the biggest asset holder, or the 18th, or the 16th and 17th century. And it should be the same entity. So even systems analysis also tells us who owns this big corporation, you know, the cartel, the syndicate. You can go to history and just pick the biggest asset holder, you know. And in Europe, well, you're looking for an asset holder that's bigger than any one kingdom. That's some asset holder that holds assets in many countries, and there's only one that comes to question, right? And that's the church. So
Wow.
it seems to be that this is exactly what Karen Hudis says, you know, she says it's the Vatican. It's the Jesuits, whereby the Jesuits are it looks like to me, as I understand it, the military enforcement arm of the top tier of the Vatican. So that is, I think, the best we can say. And you know, there were all these things of conspiracy theories and all the Vatican and so on, but systems analysis and the systems analysis work of these mathematicians at ETH Zurich tell us that yeah, this is true. These business plans are hugely successful, and I think that's the answer, Paul. I'm not sure. Are you happy with that answer? Or?
Yeah, I'd like to know how they fit in with that. According to Dr. John Coleman, in his book, he's got a couple of them. One is called Tavistock. The other one is,
Maybe 300.
I can't remember it. But he said that everything reports back to these 13 families. And these 13 families seem to run all the rest of these things. Now, how these corporations fit in with the 13 families, we can only speculate right now. But there are people that are in these 13 families that work for these families. I think they call it's some type of committee of 300, I think it is. And the people that run the committee of 300 call themselves Olympians. Now there you go, right there. That should be a good laugh. But they're Kissinger, George H.W. Bush was one, and on and on and on, the usual suspects there. But is that a red herring? Are we going off on another thing? This other analysis into this global corporation sounds a lot more mathematical and things we can go back to. But I've seen on Eric Karlstrom's website, I think it's under the 911, one of his 911 websites, and he's got the way this committee of 300 controls the RAND Corporation and this Heritage Foundation and all these other. I bet they control the corporations the same way. I bet we can trace it back to these things, and statistically, I guess we can trace it back.
Yeah, I think, you know what, the committee of 300, I mean, the name already says there are 300 people. So it's a fairly wide ring of the control structure. you know. And the question is it just one tentacle or is it the thing, you know? But the 13 families, yes, I've heard about them. Can you name them? Do you know the names, Paul? I think your microphone.
There you go. There you go. The names are interesting because just like Lucifer, they have 1,000 names. The one name is Cavendish, which is also known as Kennedy, Oppenheimer, Bush is maybe, although Bush would be a bastardization of another name. But you can get a list of those names through these books that I referenced before. But the names change. Kennedy wasn't the original name. I think it was Cavendish or something else. And as time goes by, they change the names because, you know, what's in a name? So no, I can't name them. Sorry.
Because I mean, I think Karen Hughes talks about a lot of the or some of these people, and the people she's talking about have Italian names. And again, you go back, you know, so she's talking about the top tier, certainly in the financial realm. And you know, why would it be Italian? Well, it's because, I mean, we had the Italian bankers. They were the bankers of the church. I mean, the church was headquartered in you know, in the Vatican for well, it's still headquartered in the Vatican again, and that's the HQ, you know. So it's the HQ of the biggest asset holder. And I want to emphasize that for me, the Vatican is separate from religion, okay? And the reason why it has to be separate, I mean, I'm just talking as a systems analyst, is because the church started off as an organization. They're organized churches. They had their organization of bishops and pastors and so on. Also, again, a pyramid hierarchy that has been around for centuries, you know, millennia. Now, any pyramid hierarchy gets deep captured by psychopaths after a century for sure. So anything that has been around for centuries will be the original organization as much as it is recognizable, with a really thick layer of total psychopaths at the top who are only after the power. And they don't care what they are doing, if they're selling religion or selling products, they just want power. And this is how I think even the church, you know, especially the church, because it's so old, is in deep capture. And when you have an organization in deep capture, it doesn't do what it says on the tin anymore, because it's just acting, you know. And this is why when I, you know, start going on about the Vatican, I'm just talking as a systems analyst. And people have to understand, I'm not attacking their belief or, you know, their connection with Jesus Christ. I think Jesus Christ was exactly, you know, going on about it, that you shouldn't be, you know, listening to the priests and the temples. You should find God yourself. He was talking about the decentralized model. Everybody, you know, has God in them and the connection to God. If you now go to a big hierarchy, you know, with priests and pastors and bishops and so on, you know, the same effects have been at work millennia ago. It will always be deep captured by organized criminals and psychopaths, because these pyramid hierarchies at the top just offer so much power. And one of the things that I found really shocking, it's just very recent that I even heard about it, the Vatican has got something, a building, a hall, like a kind of an auditorium, or, you know, congregation hall that was, I think, built in the 1970s, and it's called the Nervi Hall. And that's spelled N-E-R-V-I, Nervi Hall, after the architect, I think, who did that. And that building is entirely in the shape of a snake's head. Right?
I've seen that.
Wow.
Now, if you think that the Vatican has anything to do with Jesus Christ, this does make no sense. Anybody can put Nervi Hall into Google and see that when you're inside this auditorium, it really looks like you either, depending on how you visualize it, you're either inside a snake's head or you have a snake staring down at you as you're sitting in the auditorium. You know, it's freakish. It has two eyes on the side, two windows that look like snake's eyes. The actual glass inside is such that it looks like, you know, the kind of shimmering eyes of a snake. And then the little auditorium at the front has two columns that are very broad at the top and get narrow, and they look like two fangs. And in the middle, there's a red, you know, carpet, and it looks like a long tongue, you know, a snake's tongue sticking out. So you couldn't make it more like a snake's head if you tried. And as someone pointed out, nowhere in this hall is there any crucifixes or references to Jesus Christ, because Jesus Christ does not reside in there. That's why, you know.
Right.
And what this is the Vatican putting on show in the 1970s that they are the snake's head. Now, what the hell is the snake? The snake is this long, it's what I think, Catherine Austin Fitz refers to the tapeworm economy, and she discovered, you know, as the Assistant Secretary for Housing, that money seems to be siphoned off into a black budget. It's like a, you know, something sucking money away, like a parasite is sucking nutrients. And that's why she says there's a tapeworm at the heart of the US economy. And it's taking resources and it's siphoning them off to somewhere. And there are other people who have said, for example, the inland revenue money in the US is being siphoned off to the City of London and from there to the Vatican. That doesn't make any sense. Unless you know that the corporation has, it's also one of its sites in the City of London. It's called the Square Mile. And that is the City of London Corporation. It's ancient. It goes back to, I think, before, you know, William the Conqueror. That is the corporation. The City of London site belongs to the corporation. It's a tax-free zone, I think, as I understand it. They make their own tax laws. And the Queen visits, I think, the site in a ritual every year, and she has to leave her bodyguards behind at the, you know, the border to the City of London, and then is taken over by the, you know, the bodyguards given to her by the guilds, you know. So it sounds totally wacky, you know. Why the hell would something like that exist? Well, this is the big corporation we're talking about, and why would the money from the City of London be said to be siphoned off to the Vatican? Well, because the City of London is another little, you know, branch of the Vatican. And by the way, so is Washington, D.C. District of Columbia is also private land. You know, it is, and the Vatican, the City of London, and Washington, D.C. are part of what's called, as I understand it, the three-city state. And they've got a flag which has 3 red stars for the 3 cities. Now, what this is like the three HQ branches, you know. But the money between DC, the City of London, and the Vatican is sloshing around in one, you know, unofficial big circle. And the head of this snake, you know, that's taking resources from the UK through the City of London, from the entirety of the US via DC, and the tax money is being siphoned off to the head of the snake that feeds on it, which is the Vatican, you know. And when you, that is, to the best of my knowledge, how the system works. And then suddenly, when you've mapped this out, a lot of things make sense. It suddenly makes sense that the Vatican is all about bling, 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 right? They've got all the gold and they are, you know, waving it around. And meanwhile, you think, hang on, we've got all these people starving in Africa. Should you be waving golden wands here? You know, or could we possibly find a better use for that money than a golden stick, you know? But no, the church doesn't care, right? We've got all these churches blinged up, a lot of resources, certainly huge networks globally that could be mobilized to solve problems, yet they do not. Well, they do not because they're in deep capture, you know. And we've got exactly the same thing. We've got the FBI, you know, Army intelligence being contacted by us saying these people are being, you know, tortured. They do nothing. Nothing. Why? It doesn't make any sense. The FBI is a freaking police force as well as an intelligence agency. If they're not interested, who the hell should be? Yet they do nothing. And that's because they're in deep capture. And that's why. You know, and suddenly also other things make sense. Why would a guy called, I think he was called the Banker of God or God's Banker, I forget the Italian name, but a guy who was running what's called, you know, very high up in the Vatican Bank, he was found hanging off Blackfriars Bridge in London. Why London? Well, it's because he was visiting the branch office called the City of London Corporation. That's why he was bumped off there,
Yeah.
you know. And then also suddenly it makes a lot of sense that you have these obelisks. You've got an obelisk in DC, very spectacularly, you know, the big, whatever it's called. You've got an identical one in the Vatican, and you've got an identical, well, albeit smaller one in London, in the City of London as well. Right?
Washington's monument.
Exactly, that's it, the Washington Monument. And what that shows is, again, the control architecture. And this is how we get back to it, Paul, because if you look at the obelisk, at the very top, it's a pyramid. But then lower down, it's tapering very, very slowly. And that's because beyond a certain level, you have psychopaths controlling psychopaths like that. And you can't have one layer of psychopaths outnumbering the ones who control them, or they will just kill them, you know? So you have to have a very equally balanced thing. So you have to have this very long tower where, you know, the number of psychopaths controlling the younger psychopaths, you know, is almost balanced, not quite. And you've got this huge tower that only slowly gets bigger. And one layer of psychopaths knows the layer one up and maybe the layer one up, but they don't really know who's even above that. You know, there's a lot of secrecy. And that is it. The obelisk is the control architecture. And it has inscribed in it everything we said. Everything you said about the psychopaths putting organizations in deep capture, Paul, that's inscribed in the obelisk. It explains its shape, you know.
Well, that's amazing. I could talk about how the church got started and how I think it was deep capture from the beginning, that Catholic Church, because I think it was started, actually, it was made an institution by Constantine. Constantine took it on as his control mechanism for going forward to control a vast empire that he couldn't control with soldiers, so he had to control it with ideology. So he adopted this ideology that was growing quickly. But back in the day, you couldn't become a Constantine or an emperor unless you were following the Church of Babylon, which was worshiping the snake again. So we have the church from the beginning was put in deep capture by Constantine, as far as I can see. He became a Christian on his deathbed, supposedly, because he didn't want to become a Christian before, because he had to do a lot of bad things that emperors have to do.
I think it would have been bad for business had he become a Christian.
It would have been, right, it would have been bad for business. And one of the first things they did is they reverted the Sabbath from Saturday to Sunday, which was the old Babylonian religion, worshiping the sun, holy day. So it's been a deep capture from the beginning. It's just now, since they have technology, they can get into all our heads. They can supposedly roll this thing out. They've never been able to do it before, I'll tell you. And it's not like they haven't wanted to. They seem to be set up to do worse things than they've ever been able to. Well, they're doing worse things than I can imagine them ever doing before, because they have technology. So I think it's really interesting how we trace that back. We know who to point the finger at now. And now all we need to do is turn the oath keepers over to sick them on these guys at the top, and we've got it done. No, I'm just kidding about that. But good analysis, Karen.
Plane was going over, so I turned off my mic.
Okay, did you have a comment, Karen? I know that I know you've got stuff to say on this.
Well, I think I'll let you continue for the moment. You know, part of what you were saying was blocked by an airplane going over, which is why I had the mic off.
But as Karen said before, this doesn't mean Christianity or Jesus Christ. This points to an organization in deep capture, and an organization that's trying to, actually everybody knows about the one world religion that's being put together by the Pope and everything. And we've got a Muslim mayor in London.
Really?
That's a collection of bad ideas, I'll tell you that one. I'm not sure that that Muhammad himself felt that he was possessed by demons. He's, of course, a pedophile, of course, a mass murderer, and a torturer. So that religion is ensconced as one of the, well, it's he's in charge of the city of London.
Well,
So
actually, no, actually he isn't. He isn't. This is careful. We have to be very careful because London, as in Greater London, the city, is totally different from the City of London. It's so important. People get this wrong. When you say, I'm going to London, you're going to Greater London. No one of, I think 3,000 people live in the City of London, the actual City of London Corporation territory. And I tell you, you don't just move to the City of London. You know, the people who are there, they're there for a reason, I think. Maybe they rent it out to some people to make money, but, you know, otherwise it's owned by the guilds of the City of London Corporation, otherwise I think known as the Crown Corporation. Now, but it's so important to understand because the person you mentioned, he's in charge of Greater London. He has nothing to do with the guilds. And another thing that I'm learning, because, you know, I mean, my best friend is a Muslim, is that, again, we have to be so careful about taking the psychopaths away who have been throughout the millennia always trying to get huge connections of people and then controlling them with whatever brainwash suited them, you know? And I think it's so careful, we have to be careful because, I mean, Christianity is not short of killing psychopaths. Like, by no means. Look at the, you know, Crusades, you know? So what I try to do is actually take it, really break it down and try to, you know, separate the wheat from the chaff. And one of the things I would like to point out is look carefully at the joint investigation team, you know, because it was my suggestion to the ladies to found this joint investigation team. And at the time, I probably didn't make it clear to them why they were chosen, why I wanted them on my team. But now I can say, because it fits perfectly into today's show. Look at them. They represent the 5 key aspects that have been put into deep capture. We are still lacking a medic, but otherwise, Karen Stewart saw the deep capture of the intelligence agencies. Now, Millicent, she is a doctor of ministry. She actually, maybe without knowing, by representing true faith and the way she talks about religion, she is actually fighting the deep capture in the church. Even if she doesn't know it, that's what she does. She represents.
I do know it.
There you are. You know, because when I spoke to her, I saw that she has a direct link to Jesus Christ. That's what I'm looking for. Now, Karen Stewart is the most honest person in the NSA, and she went right up against the deep capture. Ramola, on the other hand, she is fighting the deep capture of the press. She has been going solo because she represents true journalism. That's it. You know, she does what a journalist should do. Now, Melanie Richan founded a human rights organization, and she, without noticing, she's fighting the deep capture and the infiltration of all the human rights organizations. And she is standing up for victims as somebody who runs a human rights organization should, you know. And meanwhile, I got totally disgusted by the behavior of my colleagues. I also know from, you know, talking to other people that there's deep capture going on in the sciences and that people are being farmed out for research. So I'm here to take up the battle against my science colleagues and fight deep capture in the sciences. So there we are. These are the, you know, the 5 pillars. We're still, you know, we could do with a lawyer and a doctor, but otherwise, you know, this is the best I could do. And this is why the women who I've chosen to be on this team are on this team, because every single one of them has a role.
And Catherine, let's add that Paul and Mindy are there to kind of help us to stay focused.
Oh, and psychology, Paul, you know, you are actually, you know, you also mentioned the deep capture in psychology and psychiatry. That's your area, you know.
Kind of tangentially, anyway. And we were talking to Lydia last night, and she brings forth the deep capture of the American spiritual community, the spiritual community that used to occupy the land, and now the United States has taken over and transformed into something else. And she gives a good account of how powerful this spiritual culture was and how much of a threat it was to the the reptile organization from the Vatican. By the way, if you want to see information about this hall that Catherine was talking about, there's a guy named Ed, and he has a channel called Outer Dark. And I find he's so incredible to me because I love his accent. And he really can get in deep, more deeply than I can even follow. But he's got a few videos on, we'll try to link them below this, that he's done on exploring the architecture in this one building. Anyway, so I just thought that Lydia is bringing forth another aspect. She's not in a committee, but we have interviewed her, and she does explain how they've been put that organization, put the American spiritual Indian connection with the land, connection with nature, how they put that into deep capture. Also,
and that has also been, as far as I can tell, exactly that, because exactly the same thing has also been done to the people of Africa, to the people of Latin America, also to the people of China. For example, ancient Chinese medicine that is, has a lot of herbal remedies, very powerful, sometimes in certain respects more powerful than the pharmaceutical industry. Everywhere around the world, it's exactly the same thing. And what we saw in the, the nations of Latin America, Africa, and in any region of the world is you have a local population that survived throughout the millennia. So in the system is inscribed a lot of information and knowledge, and a certain way of viewing the world and living in harmony with the world that allows them to survive. Had they not done that, they wouldn't have survived that long. And now come along a corporation that has no local roots, no local connection, very little understanding of the local, botany or, the land, and is trying to do the same sort of pattern that it kind of perfected in the Industrial Revolution. And it's thinks that it can deal with animals and especially people as if it was a factory, And it's doing the same sort of factory approach, and it has absolutely devastated, as far as I can tell, the world. So I think this battle that we're fighting, the people who are fighting the pedophile networks, the people who are fighting, Monsanto and the war machinery, the people who are fighting World War III, and us who are fighting the intelligence agencies, we are all fighting the same corporation. And what the 21st century battle is about, and Karen Hughes does the same thing, it is the breakup of the corporation. That's it. It has circumvented the what's that called? The kind of cartel regulations of all the countries through these interlocking board memberships, because people were looking at share ownership and stuff like that. And it kind of went through under the radar. But now we know it exists. Now we know who is doing it. And if you look carefully, for example, I know for a fact about the British heads of intelligence, they are doing what's called a revolving door. They're changing from being heads of MI6 to working for banks and working for BP. How come? Well, it's not just that, it's convenient to BP to have an ex-head of MI6 on their books, for a bit of local knowledge. No, these people are just rotating between branches of the same entity. They continue working for the same corporation. That's it. That's just it, But just briefly, I wanted to share my screen and actually show you an image of, of Nervy Hall. It's this one here. I'm not sure if you can see it, but you have the eyes on the right and the left, and then you have these little pillars here and there, and even the roof tiling is such that you can see it looks like the scales of a snake. And look at the eyes and how that's done, with the little darker tile in there. And these are the fangs. This clearly represents fangs. Little holes that, also look very similar to the...
There's no reason other than this, other than to show it's a snake. And of course, the Pope shows up in exactly the middle of the mouth. He's the mouthpiece of the snake.
Exactly.
Oh.
Horrific, isn't it?
Oh, yes, it is.
It's shocking.
When my very first seminary class was Hebrew Bible, and the first assignment messed me up so bad because, well, we had to research the early writers of the Hebrew Bible, and all of them but one were Nazi sympathizers. So, Catherine, you're right on. They are so
Right.
hidden and so covered up. We may never know the truth.
Now you know why. Now you know why. And also,
Yes.
there's a Swiss historian called Jean Cross, and he's from South Africa and he lives in Switzerland, and he's been mapping out the control structure. And he goes into the symbols, and he has mapped out. He says that the enforcement arm is called octagon. Because it's an octagon and then there's squares. You know, as you're going up in this kind of control architecture, they've got different symbols for themselves. And the police forces, he points out, have usually, octagonal hats traditionally and so on, because they're part of the same global control structure. He also talks about how the Nazis were funded out of Switzerland, how Mao, the Chinese communist leader, was educated in Switzerland. So there are all these links to Switzerland, and it's very hard to understand why unless you go back in history. And he mapped out that when Switzerland was founded, that was exactly, I think, 3 weeks or something like that, or 3 or 4 weeks or 6 weeks, something like that, after the final fall of Jerusalem, when it was taken from the Knights Templar. And he says the Knights Templar were a horde of mercenaries. And then when they were kicked out of Jerusalem, they were coming back, and they were, Knights Templar, they were, in the employ of the church. And these hordes of brutal, psychopathic, serial killing soldiers had to be somehow contained. And they were given Switzerland as their territory. And he says this is how Switzerland was founded. And it's the home of the Templars, and what they were is what they did after that. And if you go through history, you have these incursions. You have the, I think, the 30-year war and so on, where, a couple of 100,000 Swiss mercenaries murdered millions of Germans and so on. And he says these were incursions in the surrounding areas for asset accumulation. It would rob the lands and then retreat back to Switzerland behind the mountains, and then, have them up here. And it also follows from that most of the wealth, the Nazi loot came to Switzerland. Switzerland was the only area that wasn't attacked in the Second World War.
Karen was trying to get back in.
Oh, sorry. I think I can hear your microphone, Paul.
We don't know. Karen seems to have dropped out. We were just wondering whether she's there.
Yeah, I think when she's attacked, she her phone doesn't work.
Yeah.
And I was just
her call had ended. It said that her call had ended.
Oh. Well, I can tell you that the octopus is a major symbol of the control system. Also, Switzerland has CERN, which I think is deeply satanic and connected with could we call it the reptile system. Also, did you see the ceremony opening the Goddard Tunnel? I think you're right in the belly of the beast there, Catherine.
I absolutely am. And the Goddard Tunnel has a second function, I think, because it is a freight train connection, I think, as I understand, between, northern Italy and Switzerland. So it's connecting Germany to Italy. So it allows the very fast transport of huge amounts of stuff. So, trains. Where have you heard trains before? Well, wasn't it the case that Warren Buffett bought some huge train connecting the width of the US or something like that recently? Because if you are
Karen is calling back in. Mindy, can you pick it up?
I'm going to give it a try. See how to do it. Let me try this. Karen.
Where's Karen calling? Is she calling you, Millicent, or Mindy?
Well, my phone was ringing, but it was ringing on Hangouts.
Right. Or maybe Karen by accident tried to call you. and not Mindy or something like that. Maybe send her another invite.
That's what we just did.
We'll see if that works.
Let's see if that did.
Actually, you know what, Paul? The Goddard Tunnel, I think. Oh, there she is.
There she is.
Karen, we were just talking about the satanic ceremony that opened the Goddard Tunnel in Switzerland and the role of Switzerland in all this. And I was talking about how according to the historian Jean Ross, the foundation of Switzerland has to do with the Knights Templar being kicked out of Jerusalem. And Switzerland was founded, the exact number of weeks that it takes to ride on horseback from Jerusalem back to Switzerland, and then Switzerland was founded here. But then there's the satanic ceremony opening the Goddard Tunnel. And I think the Goddard Tunnel is also important because it allows the fast movement of stuff from between Italy and Germany. And I think it's also related to, for example, Warren Buffett buying a train line across the width of the US, if I'm informed correctly. Now, you want to use trains. You can make huge profits if you're on train lines if there is a war, because heavy duty equipment and soldiers have to be transported. So the Goddard Tunnel, the satanic opening to do with war and death and Satan and giving rebirth and blah, 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 and also Warren Buffett buying the train line, seem to indicate to me that, yes, what's planned is a world war in Europe and the US, and these people want to profit from it, I think.
Good. We're going to have to bring this thing to an end. Like all the Techno crime fighter forums in the past, this was a bombshell. I'm still reeling from the information we were able to put together and generate. You three are amazing researchers, and you're strong fighters for the cause. It seems like the whole system is massive. That there's no way to defend against it. But I would remind you that their biggest fear, the thing that can tear them apart more than anything, is truth. And as long as we keep generating the truth, as long as we keep unearthing the truth, the more we keep exposing them, the more vulnerable they are. So, have a little sign off, say what you want to say, and then we'll call it a wrap on this Techno Crime Fighters Forum. Millicent, would you like to start?
Well, I would just like to continue in what I was saying about the effort that it takes to prove that you've been illegally implanted and how they are able to torture people in their own homes. We are set up as torture chambers. Take it for yourself. A police sergeant stood on my front porch and told me, when you go to the hospital, when you have to go to surgery, they put implants in you. I called an FBI, actually the FBI terrorism division in Memphis, Tennessee, and the person that I spoke with on the phone said, we know whose chips are on. So, that's pretty clear that the government, not just the government, but law enforcement, knows about people being illegally implanted, and that is being used to cause them harm.
Great. Thank you very much, Dr. Millicent Black. Karen?
Well, I'm probably going to go off on a evangelical tangent that just very briefly and say that in Ephesians 2:2, I believe, it talks about Satan being the god of the airwaves. And having studied end times prophecy on and off, I tell you, I never imagined that included directed energy weapons or the concept of them. So I would like to say, I think that what we're looking at is basically what the Bible talks about, is nearly destroying the world before Christ comes back. But I think right now, things did not go according to satanic plan, and that God stepped in, and we do have a grace period. And I think we need to make the most of it. And I think that if we look and decide that, yes, God has stepped in and he is holding back evil, and allowing us to fight the good fight. And we need to make sure that we are on his side and not claim he's on ours. We need to make sure we are on his side. And I think we will prosper and we will win and we will push back for as long as the grace period lasts. And I don't know whether that's a few months or whether that's the end of my lifetime. I mean, I'm 60, so 10, 20 years maybe, 10, 20 months maybe, I don't know. But I am encouraged, and I tell people, if you have been discouraged, drop that. Be encouraged and look to God and ask, what is your place here? Because he knew every single one of us was going to be here, alive, in this unique time in history, and it was no accident. So if you're sitting there being feeling sorry for yourself, no, you have a purpose. Your job is to find it. Your job is to ask on your knees, what is my purpose? Because you have me here for a reason. I am not an accident.
That's good.
So that's what I wanted to say.
Wow. That's fantastic. Thank you very much, Karen. Catherine, the last word.
Yes, well, I would like to honor this because what Millicent and what Karen said is really powerful. And actually, I find it incredibly powerful. And I'm an atheist, and I will explain why. Because when I talked to Karen and Millicent and also Ramola, I discovered that we are all saying the same thing. We're just using different words. So when they're saying God stepped in, and everything they described, the process and how it has been described in the past, and we're now living it. As an atheist, I'm saying exactly the same thing. I'm just using different words. And it's actually beautiful to see that what I'm saying is 100% mirrored by exactly what they're saying. So I will say everything that they said in my own words, which is, as far as I can tell, as a physicist, that what they call God, I call the laws of physics. And it's beautiful because they're ancient and no one can ever break them. No one can go against the will of God. So for me, physics, the laws of physics are what they call the will of God, as far as I can tell. And the laws of physics say is that this system is going to be wound up. And there are certain processes I can tell are at work. Call it rebound, call it system inertia, or call it, forces, restorative forces. And they haven't just kicked in, they are getting ever more powerful by the day. And I could tell that when I was in Belgium, because we suddenly managed to recruit people at the university to help us. We found police officers who were totally on our side, and they were willing to help us. So what we're now seeing is that people are coming together. And what Millicent and Karen said is that people have to, they have a purpose here on this planet, and they have to find what it is. I can say as a systems analyst, that's 100% true. We have been misguided to believe that little people don't matter. But that's wrong, because we're dealing with non-linear systems, highly complex non-linear systems, where sometimes a sentence, a tweet from somebody can go viral and can change opinion. So little people can have a huge impact. They can, actually, that's the truth that the world leaders don't want us to know, is that a private person can change the course of history. And I want everybody to know that. That is, my colleagues call it the will of God. I call it the laws of physics, but the outcome is exactly the same. So everything that they said is true. And I want everybody to now stand up and decide whose side they're on, who they want to support, because really the smallest thing will make a difference and will change history.
Wow. Thank you very much. And this is the end of episode 9 of the Techno Crime Fighters Forum. Thank you very, very much. And thank you for watching, and thank everybody in the chat. Bye-bye.